Welcome back. So today we're going to tear apart what a lot of people just glance over as a support section in their ISMS. But here's the thing. It's not just support. It's the absolute heart and soul of the whole operation. We're talking about Section 7, the engine room that actually powers your information security program and turns all those policies on paper into a living, breathing security culture. Okay, let's get into it. Here's our game plan for today. First, we'll frame exactly why support is so much more important than it sounds. Then, we'll get into laying the foundation. That's all about resources and competence. From there, we'll fire up the human layer with awareness and communication. Next up, the system's official record. Yep, documentation. And finally, we'll connect all the dots and see how these pieces work together as one living system. So let's really set the stage here. You can think of all your policies, your controls, your risk assessments. That's the blueprint for a fortress, right? But Section 7, that's the concrete, that's the steel. It's the power grid and the skilled crew actually building the thing. Without this support infrastructure, all those brilliant plans, well, they're just paper. They don't actually do anything. All right, so let's dig into the first two building blocks of that foundation. It all comes down to two simple things: making sure you have the stuff you need and making sure your people actually know what they're doing with it. It all starts right here with Clause 7.1. And listen, this is so much more than just a line item in a budget. This clause is about a formal commitment. It means the organization has to figure out and then actually provide the people, the tech, and the cash to not only get the ISMS off the ground, but to keep it running and getting better over time. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Clause 7.2 takes this kind of fuzzy idea of competence and turns it into a super clear four-step process that you can actually audit. You can't just hope people know their stuff. You have to define the skills, make sure your people have them, do something about it if they don't, and, this is the key part for auditors, keep the receipts. And check this out. This little note in the standard is basically a pro tip. It shows you just how flexible you can be. It's not demanding that you send everyone on expensive training courses. It could be as simple as mentoring, moving a skilled person into a new role, or just hiring a contractor. The goal is the skill, not how you got it. Okay, so now we have skilled people. That's great. But an army of skilled individuals isn't the same as a skilled army, right? So how do we create an environment where everyone works together effectively? That's the next big jump, from individual skill to a real shared security culture. And here is the absolute crucial distinction you have to understand: competence versus awareness. Competence, what we just talked about, is knowing how to do a task. Awareness is knowing why that task even matters. So a developer might be totally competent at writing secure code, but awareness is what makes them understand why a SQL injection vulnerability could sink the entire company. It's the context. And Clause 7.3 breaks that why down into these four pillars. And notice it says all persons. From the CEO to the newest hire, everyone needs to get this. They have to know the policy, see their part in the big picture, get the upside of doing things right, and really understand the serious downside of getting it wrong. But, of course, awareness doesn't just magically appear. You have to build it. And that's why Clause 7.4 is so brilliant. It forces you to have a real communication plan. You have to think like a strategist. What do we need to say? When should we say it? Who needs to hear it? And what's the best way to make sure they actually listen? All right, we've got resources, competence, awareness, and a communication plan. But how do we make any of it last? You know, what happens when a key person wins the lottery and leaves? Well, that brings us to documented information. This is the institutional memory of your ISMS, making sure it survives and stays consistent no matter who is on the team. Now, before you start having nightmares about mountains of paperwork, take a deep breath. The standard has this crucial little note. The amount of documentation you need isn't set in stone. It depends on just three things: how big and complex your organization is, how complex your processes are, and how competent your people are. A small startup of experts needs way less documentation than a global bank. So let's walk through the life of a document. And that starts, obviously, with creation. But this isn't just about typing things up. It's about making sure that from day one, your documented information is actually useful, clear, and properly managed. Clause 7.5.2 basically gives us a simple, powerful quality checklist. Every document needs to be easy to find. Think title, date, author. It needs a consistent format and version control.
And, most importantly, someone has to formally review and approve it to make sure it's actually right for the job. This is what stops that chaos of having 20 different, outdated versions of a policy floating around. Now, once a document is created and approved, you're not done. Not even close. In fact, the real work is just beginning. Now, the focus shifts to control, making sure that single source of truth is available where and when it's needed, protected from people who shouldn't see it, and managed properly through its entire life. In Clause 7.5.3 covers the whole shebang. It's about availability, it's about protection, from data loss or misuse. It's about managing who can access it and how. It's about version control so no one uses the wrong one. And finally, it's having a clear plan for how long to keep documents and how to securely get rid of them when you're done. This is the real operational backbone.
So let's pull it all together. It is so easy to look at these 5 clauses: resources, competence, awareness, communication, documentation, and just see them as a checklist for your next audit. But their real power, the magic, is how they all talk to each other, how they reinforce each other in this dynamic, living system.
Just think about the feedback loops. When you go through your competence process from 7.2 and you find a skill gap, bam, that creates a direct, data-driven reason to act, and that action informs your resource allocation back in 7.1. You're not guessing anymore. You know exactly where you need to invest in training or hiring to make your system stronger. And that feedback loop works in the other direction too. That structured communication plan we talked about in 7.4, that's the engine that takes individual pockets of knowledge and scales it up into a company-wide awareness. It's how you get everyone on the same page about the why of security. And finally, documentation is the glue that holds all of this together. It captures the knowledge of your competent people so it doesn't just walk out the door. It provides the official source material, the what, that your communication plan needs to build awareness. You see that cycle? Competence informs documentation, which enables communication, which builds awareness. It all feeds itself. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. When you look at Section 7 in your own organization, what do you see? Do you see a bunch of boxes you have to tick off to pass an audit? Or do you see the fundamental building blocks you need to cultivate a genuine, resilient, and self-sustaining security culture? Because how you answer that question really defines how effective your entire ISMS is ever going to be.